My friends, I am Vivian McPeak, and this is Hemp Present. If you have feedback or would like to suggest a guest or topic for Hemp Present, email me at hemppresent@gmail.com. Leonora, or Leo Russell, is a marriage and family therapist and substance abuse counselor who left a 20-year career in government and social services and providing direct services to the most disenfranchised to direct her attention to the burgeoning psychedelic renaissance. In 2019, she began leading the Decriminalize Nature effort in Seattle and moved on to form the political action group Adapt Washington, a voter-based initiative focused on legalizing psilocybin and decriminalizing small amounts of entheogens for personal use. She also runs a 501c3 called Entheo Society, focused on creating community in the psychedelic space. Leo is currently writing, directing, and filming in Idaho for the Psychedelic Road Trip movie, a comedy documentary about Dana Beal, who's been on this show, and Idaho and the plant medicine movement. And she's organizing with others the largest plant medicine educational event in Idaho's history on February 22nd at the Boise Depot. Welcome back, Leo, to Hemp Present.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Yeah. Real quickly, for the benefit of some listeners, I want to provide a little setup to my first question, and you can tell me how I do, since you're the expert. Entheogens are psychoactive substances used in spiritual, religious, or ritual contexts to induce altered states of consciousness, often described as mystical, transcendent, or spiritually insightful. And examples can include psilocybin mushrooms in Mesoamerica, ayahuasca in the Amazon, peyote in North America, and soma in ancient Vedic traditions. Modern research highlights their therapeutic potential in treating depression, PTSD, anxiety, and end-of-life distress. As a few examples, with clinical trials showing significant benefits used in controlled intentional settings. And lastly, entheogens are not limited to natural plants. Synthetic compounds like DMT, LSD, MDMA, and ketamine are also used in entheogenic context. And full disclosure, personally, I've engaged in some non-clinical layperson experiments of my own. Do you agree with most of that?
Yeah, I mean, I consider cannabis to be an entheogenic experience, and I somehow I feel like bufo ends up getting looped in there, even though it's an animal spirit medicine kind of like combo. So I use the term somewhat loosely, kind of interchangeably with plant medicines.
Good point on cannabis. Leo, you were part of the committee for legalizing psilocybin centers last year. Tell me how that went for you and what you walked away from that experience feeling or thinking about the Washington State psychedelic movement.
Well, that's such a big question. I feel like I could write a book on that. I'm currently working on writing a book about that. So I feel like I could give you a summary. I found the experience distasteful last year, but I think it's because sometimes I wake up to the fact that I'm in a female body and I realize that maybe if I were male, my experience might be different. And I had given advice to the kind of the main dude behind the money for the legislative effort last year. And I said, hey, buddy, you know, this is what I would do. This is what I would do. This is what I would not do. This is what I would do. And let me kind of clue you in on this war between decrim that's been kind of identified as an indigenous movement. And I would say falsely so. And then the legalized movement, which I think has been kind of demonized as like this white man's big money maker, but actually there's not a lot of money in psychedelics because people tend to do psychedelics and then they tend to get better and they don't need it continually like cannabis. So it's not really a money maker. And so I was so disheartened by kind of seeing the revelatory part of like seeing big pharma work its way into like our democratic legislative, you know, people that we are putting our faith and our trust into. And I think I became disheartened with the liberal aspect of Washington State because I felt like they were thinking that their democratic leaders were somehow better. And we found more Republicans that were supporting in terms of the effort for legalizing the psilocybin centers. But what I found frustrating and heartbreaking most of all was like the ignorance and the lack of understanding. And so that gentleman in particular did not take any of my advice. And then when I checked in with him later and I kind of gave him some feedback on things that I personally would have preferred had gone a different way, just in case he cared, you know, he didn't reach out, but I let him know. And in that moment, he chose to let me know that he had hired like a whole group of people, political analysts that had, that he put money into paying. And they gave him, he said, the same advice that I had given him in kind of an analysis of everything that had gone wrong and who not to work with and who not to go with. And I was like, wow, buddy. And like, I was giving you that information for free. And I think for women, it often can feel like Cassandra from like the Greek myths of just like, I'm giving this free advice, but like maybe it's like the pantyhose that throws men off in power, that they want someone more substantial that comes with like a lot of credentials and a suit and a tie and a masculine gender. I don't know.
He paid for the same advice and then didn't take theirs either?
No. He paid for like a group to analyze what went wrong. Like he was in like 400K or something.
After the fact.
Right.
Can you just unpack a little bit why you have such frustration with the indigenous claims about the integrity of the decrim movement versus legalization? In fact, what is the difference?
Yeah.
And how, and also expand on how you see big pharma exploiting all of this.
Well, big pharma makes their money with the institutionalization of people. Like prison is a huge moneymaker. The cycling of the people in and out of the chemical dependency programs that don't work is a huge moneymaker. You get them on the way in, you get them on the way out, you get them for Suboxone, you get them for methadone. So they own these institutions, and we are a very institutionalized country. And so what I find in the psychedelic community is there's a disconnect, right, with the Black brothers out there who are the ones predominantly hit with those hard numbers of being like the most institutionalized nation as far as industrialized nations that lock up their citizens, right? So there's just a huge percentage of Black young men that I think end up in the prison industrial complex. And I think it's disheartening to see how these laws that these people that are kind of lazy, if I'm just kind of honest, in the psychedelic movement, they're like, yay, we got decrim. Oh, yay. We're such fierce fighters, like rock on, sister. And they don't realize that those laws don't mean shit. Those laws don't mean shit. And those laws are not going to protect you. And then I find it frustrating that I'll have like an indigenous friend who's accustomed to the Native American church, and they're like, oh, it should just be natural. And they haven't been hanging out, Vivian, at these open psychedelic markets in Seattle that are basically free market capitalism, right? They're not giving it away to the mom in the ghetto or paying for childcare for the ibogaine, retreat for the moms that are poor. They're making big money and being untaxed and unregulated. So it's not about like the free love giveaway stuff. And so these people are breaking federal law, but they are not held accountable, and that does not bother them. But they're engaged in free market capitalism. So that's the short version.
Right. And then I've heard complaints about cultural appropriation as well, in the whole process. But it's a deep subject. You are currently writing, directing, and filming in Idaho for the Psychedelic Road Trip movie, a comedy documentary about Dana Beal.
Yeah.
Tell us about Dana Beal.
Yeah.
And why do you feel a comedy documentary on the plant medicine movement, political scene,
so necessary, so needed
now, right?
Yeah, the evolution of any cultural group comes to a point of self-reflection. So you saw kind of Cheech and Chong do that with the cannabis movement. And I'm kind of here to say, I'm kind of tired of the division. I'm tired of the decrim versus legalization. I want to make fun of it because I want to make fun of us, right? We're so enlightened with this psychedelic medicine. We so much know so much better than everyone else about how to achieve enlightenment, and you know what I mean? Like be enlightened or whatever this psychedelic movement is. And that's kind of preposterous, right? Because we're all just kids, right? And then we die, right? So psychologically, I think it's an evolutionary turning point when a cultural group can recognize like its own comedic element, right? Like Jesus laughing at himself or something. So for me, the movie is not just about Dana. Dana's kind of the protagonist, right? Dana comes from New York City. He's deep in with like trans rights activists and AIDS activists and very, very left, right? And then he gets locked up in Idaho, and Idaho is where anarchists go to die, right? It's people that they want your laws off their body, but at the same time, they do smoke weed, right? They do take mushrooms. They do ayahuasca, but no one knows about it, right? Because they're not advertising. So it's kind of like a way to show the United States, the world, how conflicted we are, where we have people that don't necessarily understand one another. I would articulate that Dana doesn't really understand Idaho. I don't know that he spent much time in Idaho. I don't know that
he's a New York radical. He's a yippie, original Youth National Party, original back with Abby Hoffman and all of them. And you know, right in the heart of New York City, and he was transporting cannabis through Idaho. And which is a dubious, choice.
No, foolish. Yeah, foolish. But Dana's a sweetheart, but I think he's a very interesting character to use as a protagonist, because there's a lot in Dana that I like. I mean, I think we're all kind of complex characters, and I think we're ready to take the evolution of the psychedelic movement a step further. You know what I mean? Looking at some of the personalities. In some ways, I see Dana as kind of like the bad boy. Like, he doesn't always play by the rules. And
that's Dana. I mean, and he's one of the most driven people I've ever known. He's like laser focused on his ibogaine mission. Like he was with legal. He started the Million Marijuana March, was pretty much the impetus behind that. But he's also really a character, right? He is already something out of a comedy satire.
He is a comedy. And for Dana to engage in this and show this deep vulnerability before he goes to prison is huge. And also it's kind of like a commentary on, where do we see men kind of from a certain generation? Like, Dana may never cop up to the idea that maybe that wasn't the smartest move in the world, right? Maybe he made some poor choices. Maybe he has some age-related, memory issues, right? But I think for all of us, there's a fear of death, that's very circulating in our society, right? And I think psychedelics let us play with death. They let us experience what it means to enter into another state.
And there's a fearless warrior aspect of Denny. He's 78 years old, and he's like,
he's gonna live forever, man.
Hauling weed in a vehicle through Texas to take it to New York to make money to get ibogaine to traumatic brain injury soldiers in Ukraine. I mean, he's crazy.
He thought that he was going to bring ibogaine to the people of Idaho as like a civic service for being caught and to give back and so forth. And I remember just trying to get it through his head, like, these people are very, like, the legislative people in Idaho are very close-minded. Like, I don't know that you're really reading the room here. But he has eternal hope, kind of like, well, then we have to educate them, or
Yeah. I mean, somebody has to believe it's possible and defy everything.
He has to be the dreamer.
It's very dangerous.
Dreamer. He's a very difficult personality. So
yeah. And I just want to say that comedy satire is so important in social commentary, right? It can cut through layers. That some wonky documentary can't even begin to touch, right? It has a magic. Comedy has a magic about it. Mocking people, mocking authoritarians has always been such an effective way.
So the last big comedy out of Idaho was Napoleon Dynamite, right? So that was a friggin' cult classic, right? So we're coming up on like some very comedic people in the plant medicine community, like whether they see it or not, can be very comical. So
and well, yes, because everybody can be very comical, but I agree, especially in this community. And so I just want to touch on real quickly. I have a lot of questions for you. That you are writing, directing, and filming this effort. That's a big
And you had mentioned how comedy is so medicinal as far as getting people to kind of laugh at themselves or see a message if they're not being preached at, which I think we're kind of done with preaching. People are done with being preached at. So I just wanted to comment that the comedy really has a great medicine to getting people to think and see.
Yes, it's actually a brilliant strategy, I think, to get something that's as complex as entheogens. Just talking about reading the room, tell us about the largest plant medicine event in Idaho's history. quote unquote, on February 22nd at the Boise Depot.
Yeah.
I have family in Boise, and they're very progressive, and I assume they're going to be there. What is your purpose in helping to organize the event, and how do you think it's going to help educate the general public, especially Idahoans, on plant medicines?
So I'm nervous about the event, if I'm honest, Vivian, but if we get on like Fox News or something, then it could be that we just like sell out. We have 165 tickets to sell. So I'm just basically asking everyone and their mother if they can post it in their groups or their Hemp Fest groups or whatever. But we just got Paul Stanford. He's going to be speaking. He's going to be driving out to Idaho to participate and be in the movie. But yeah, it is the largest event in Idaho's history of all the plant medicine groups coming together. And what I'd like to do is use this as a model and go to other states and do this. But I'm very tired. I'm just frustrated. Like as a political leader, I'm just, tired.
I can't relate at all.
Yeah. Yeah. And my body is telling me that, like, hey girl, this isn't working, so I gotta make it work for my body so I'm healthy. But I want to take all the plant medicine groups, because sometimes there's like a snobbery going on where the psychedelic people are like, oh, we don't really want to be with the cannabis people. They smell, they're dirty, they're hippies, right? We want to be like, educated and tech bros, and you know what I mean? And it's kind of like, well,
that's funny because never in the history of cannabis has that been less true than today. When it was a lot true.
Oh, the stereotype.
But yes, the stereotypes, they die very slowly and very hard.
Well, except I looked at Boise Hemp Fest, and no offense, it does look like a lot of people, with dreads and kind of wearing, clothes that are well worn and comfortable, and
in Idaho, that's probably the only people willing
exactly.
To but yeah, it is what it is. And ironically, Sarah Frank from the Boise Hemp Fest is my scheduled guest for next week, who's been doing the work right in Idaho, right?
So I'm hoping that she's going to speak at the event. What's unfortunate is sometimes what we saw like in Washington State is that because Idaho is poised to legalize, right, for medical cannabis, that's going to be on the ballot this year. Yep. And they just recently got enough signatures for that to be on the ballot, is my understanding.
Yep.
So what happens sometimes is those community leaders that don't necessarily have, if there's no reason, you know what I mean? Sometimes the community aspect can go away because people become satisfied. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yep.
And so I think it'll be interesting to see where, she might transition if things do change. I see things changing so rapidly in Idaho. And there's also supposedly a psilocybin veterans effort with Glow Idaho that's like legislative, like it's poised to go somewhere in this next legislative session, like a clinical trial for psilocybin. So
interesting.
But I want to get all these kind of groups that are a little bit sometimes divisive, which is not specific to Idaho. I've experienced that in Washington. So how can I get groups to work together, right? Even if they don't like one another, even if they don't have the same, goal, how do I get them to, not have to reinvent the wheel for psychedelics? Like the cannabis movement has already been doing this.
Well, speaking of that, cannabis has been successful, with reform efforts in many states, actually, with an emerging legal retail industry it's generated a lot of complexity and some mixed results, in my opinion. How much have you learned from that example? And are there strategies or approaches that you want to mimic or avoid from the cannabis effort as you advocate for entheogens?
I want to include all plant medicines and bufo and combo in there, you know what I mean? And I want to stop kind of the division over like names, like I'm the cannabis group over here, or I'm the psilocybin group over here, or I'm the ayahuasca group over here. I would like people to be kind of more united, like the plant medicine party, you know what I mean? As far as like a political party. Yeah, so I think my biggest issue is not choosing the divisiveness of one plant or one psychedelic, element that is your thing. It's like, well, we're all talking about things that alter our states of being and we feel help benefit us spiritually or physically, that are not considered like normal medicine, even though it's been used historically and throughout history.
Even though that's the origin of medicine, right? And the majority of pharmaceutical medicines are plant derivatives, right?
Right. And even you could argue most religions like originate from interacting with plant medicine. So
and food is plant medicine, right?
Right.
Vegetables, beans, grains. I want to go back to one thing you mentioned that you had strong feelings about, and back to cannabis. Well, things have been changing. There's long been complaints about a grass ceiling, which is, of course, a rip off of the glass ceiling in the cannabis reform movement and the industry, with men dominating the environment. What do you see as double standards for women in the psychedelic space? Can you expand more on that? Are there unique challenges you see women struggling with in leadership?
Yeah.
How do you personally hope to be a role model for girls and young women looking for representation in plant medicine and beyond?
Yeah, I mean, I can only speak for being a white woman. I'm Jewish and a white woman, and that's how I identify. So I have to speak to what white women's experiences are. I think white women historically in this country, like we've never had a white woman president, but it's the largest voting demographic. So I think it's a little bit pitiful that I think white women kind of get stuck in this Karen, like Becky, like I'll support the white man role. Or you have super liberal white women that are like, take the black sister before me for president. You know what I mean? I don't need anything. You know what I mean? So you kind of have these two kind of white women roles, like the MAGA women, I think are often ignored in the psychedelic movement instead of trying to engage with them. But I do see women as role models slowly happening, except we have double standards for them. And that's the only unfortunate part. So I was talking with my trans friend the other day and I said, did you realize it's 2/3 like women that want to become men and 1/3 men that want to become women? And I said, you can't like divorce power from that. I said, it's very interesting to think about why would there be twice as many women that want to become men? And I said, because to be honest, it's crossed my mind. Like if I had a sex change, would I get treated differently? Do you know what I mean? It's just kind of crossed my mind. Like
there's a clear power dynamic.
Well, men do get, like when people think Leo means male, they treat me very differently. It's just weird. So
gee, my name is Vivian. I don't have any idea what
oh my God. There's all these things where you're like, I kind of know what you're talking about. So here's the thing.
I get guys hitting on me through
I'm sure.
Facebook,
and you're like,
when I leave like scathing comments.
Right.
I leave scathing comments on stuff, right? Political comments.
The
condescending shit that I get,
I can't imagine as a child.
Okay, honey, and all this kind of weird shit, it cracks me up.
So, my heart breaks sometimes because I'm like, fuck, I don't want to do it like my mom had to do it. My mom had to get into a male, dominated occupation and like pretend to be a male. And I see a lot of white women when I look at like role models for how I can be, that kind of just like play the game like my mom did. Like I'm a nice little quiet woman that's just gonna kind of like fade into the background. Like don't notice me too much, and I'll do everything like very quietly and not too obtrusively. And then I also see kind of like this Kama Sutra goddess woman that kind of seems to celebrate her sexuality, but to the point where it's like yoni workshop after yoni workshop, or it's all about kind of like sexuality and the divine feminine, but they're not allowed to be like leaders. Like for me, a leader is like Joan of Arc. That's like, hey guys, you better hustle. Like we're going to war. Grab your fucking sword. We're going to war, And that's kind of what I want to lead, right? I want to be like Joan of Arc, but I don't know. I've had myself made fun of. There's like this hate piece out there about how I want to be like the next Martin Luther King Jr. And I keep thinking to myself, like, so it's bad for a white woman to want to be someone as great because we can't have like a white woman that's kind of like a Martin Luther King Jr. Like I'm trying to understand like why is this so offensive?
Go ahead. Finish your thought. I was just going to say, I would consider the hate piece a compliment that,
Oh, yeah.
People that aren't doing anything don't get hate pieces.
women have a unique experience of being raised to be likable. I think men have the experience of being raised to be caregivers for the family, or have money and make money and have an occupation and somehow support families financially. I'm just saying, in typical gender roles, if you just want to kind of like black and white it. And my experience is that it's really hard, I think, for women that are leaders to take shit in terms of being called like a bitch or something, right? Because
on that, I want to quickly slip in. We have about 5 minutes.
Okay.
On your social media, under about, you wrote one sentence: "Not your Gloria Steinem feminista." What does "not your Gloria Steinem feminista" mean to you?
It's all this big rabbit hole with Gloria Steinem and some of her ties. Like it goes deep, but it's like there's a whole book written about her being involved with the CIA. It's kind of a rabbit hole. So I think what it says is I'm not someone the government would ever want to work with, like, to my knowledge. I'm not someone that the CIA would ever want to partner with, to my knowledge. Like, I don't see that happening.
Okay.
And just, I feel like I'm more like Groucho Marx, like, doesn't want to be part of the group that you know what I mean? Like, something about being popular doesn't really fit well with me. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I guess so.
So being popular sometimes in this culture feels passive or something. And so I kind of like being the person that is brave enough to say, okay, I'm okay with not being liked. And I'm not saying that that's easy, but I think that's what I aim to be, is someone who's okay with, if I have to march alone. Do you know what I mean? If everyone started eating humans or something, and I was the one person who said, I'm just not going to eat humans. So.
Okay. I'll file that for when the apocalypse happens.
Yeah. Well, I've been watching a lot of preparation for, like, if there's no food, and how you can, like, roast acorns and all this stuff. I didn't know you can make acorn bread, and it's very interesting. But yeah, we're definitely living in very astrologically very crazy times. So.
Well, I think the chance of an apocalypse is closer now than any other time in modern human history, actually. Just and conversely, one of my favorite kind of movies is the post dystopian apocalyptic survival stuff. It's the only reason that I even put up with zombie movies, because I love that aspect of how would I survive? What would I do? And I would, of course, be at Costco. At first, I hit the gun shop, then I'd go to Costco, and like that'd be where I'm living for the next year or something. Real quickly, what do we have? We've got less than 3 minutes. For anyone inspired by your work or wants to get more involved, what are their next steps? How can they support Adapt Washington and the entheogens society's work around?
We have 2 to 7 million we need for the voter-based initiative, modeled after Colorado. So it's basically send us someone who has big money that cares about the vision. It's basically just modeled after what Colorado's done. So it's fairly cut and dried. The next couple of weeks, we're going to be in Idaho. And so connect with us, like, on Facebook and YouTube and stuff like that, either with Entheo Society, the Psychedelic Road Trip movie, or if you look on Eventbrite, it would be really nice to get people's support with putting the word out there about the largest plant medicine event in Idaho's history as far as education. And it's going to be pulling all those groups together, all the different psychedelic groups and all the different plant medicine groups and legalization efforts and all of it. And that's on the 22nd in Boise, and you can go on Eventbrite.
Very good. Final thoughts?
I don't know. I hope this movie, like, changes the world. I really hope it reflects on not just a man's life, but also America and the political divide that we see separating us, and how we can unite in humor and in love and in self-awareness.
Is it when you say it's a comedy documentary, does it have people playing themselves?
Yeah. I mean, it's documenting the whole smorgasbord of people that we see in the psychedelic movement, but also people in Idaho as we do our movie.
Very good. And very quickly, the comedy part, is it scripted, or is the comedy just the reality playing out?
Well, I mean, there is a script, but I mean, I'm assuming with Dana we'll go off script. We're trying to get Jim Belushi to do a cameo. He has a cannabis business, and we're like, hey, Jim Belushi, you can do a free commercial. But that's kind of like a harkening back to the era of like the 60s when like people seemed maybe a little bit less uptight.
Yep. I hear you. Leo, it's always great talking to you. I always get a different perspective from you and have so much respect for all your efforts and how amazing you are.
Thank you, Vivian. You too. You're an amazing human being. Thank you.
Oh no, you've been liked. Just messing with you. The Hemp% intro music is 7 Mile Beach by Joanne Rand. The outro music, Take Back the Plant by Stickerbush. See you next time, folks.
Marijuana.